at the moment, and there may be a few more people that filter in. Just a couple of sort of housekeeping sort of notices to go through. So we do record these sessions because we put them online for those that aren't able to attend, and anyone that may wish to sort of engage with this later on. So it is being recorded. At the moment, I can only see SARD faces. If anyone wishes to switch their camera on, that's fine. Just be aware that you will be a mini celebrity on our YouTube channel. And if anyone else looks at it, you are very welcome to. If you don't wish to be seen, obviously, then you can remain off camera. So how this will generally work is we're going to, it's roughly about an hour, but the actual sort of presentation and demonstration won't take that long, so it gives us an opportunity for questions. Obviously, if there's any questions that you think of afterwards, feel free to contact us. I know that Chris and Jan will sort of pop an email out after the session just to say hello, to see if you how you felt about the webinar, if you had any other questions. What we tend to do is I'll run through a little bit about us, like the agenda, the demonstration, and at that point we ask questions. I tend to normally, in normal sort of demonstrations that I do, I'm quite happy to take questions at any point in time, but just for the purposes that it's being recorded and for the flow, if we can wait till the end. I tend not to be able to see hands up at the end, or if you do have any questions, feel free to write them in, but I will again look at those as we go through. So for anyone who's just joined, as I just mentioned, it is being recorded. So if you wish to remain anonymous, keep your cameras off. If you wish to be seen, then feel free to put them on. So yes, today's session is about physician associates and what our systems can do to help individuals in those roles go through sort of the processes that exist. And I will talk about what those are. So before I get started, I'll introduce myself. I won't introduce everybody because it would take too long. But I'm Phil Bottle. I'm the managing director of SARD and one of the co-founders. And it's our 10th birthday this year. So in January we turned 10, which is why I've got this nice new logo that says 10, which is great. We're happy to still be here, and we're happy to be working with lots of trusts around the country and continuing to develop new things. So let's have a look. Let's see where we can get to. So in terms of the agenda, as I say, I've just introduced myself. I will talk a little bit about SARD for those of you that haven't worked with us before and wish to know a little bit about us. I'll go through just a little bit of sort of history and also how we work, because I think it's really important when we're thinking about the system that I'm showing you today, how we're able to get to that point as quickly as we have, and where we'll be able to get to in the future. Because I think one of the things that we briefly talk about is how things will be changing for physician associates as things go on. So I will give a little bit of background as well to the physician associates and the requirements and how our system sort of relates to that. I'll then show you the system itself and talk through sort of various aspects of it, how it works now, how we are hoping it's going to work in the future. And then at the end of all of that, any questions that you have, I'll try my best to answer them, and we can do that at the end. So a little bit about us. As I mentioned, we're 10 years old now. We started off way before the 10-year anniversary. I used to work for Oxley's NHS Foundation Trust as their head of learning and development. And whilst in the trust, I came in quite green to the NHS. I'd been at Gloucestershire hospitals before that, but only for sort of around about a year. And when I came into Oxley's, they gave me a bit of a blank piece of paper and said, we want to change things. We want to mix things up a little bit. We don't have a very solid foundation for information. And because of that, some of our systems and processes weren't working as well as they could have been. So I actually invited in Kevin Monk, who those of you on the call before saw popped in and then popped out again because he's got a meeting with Oxley's now. And together we started to develop some systems for the trust around negative reporting for mandatory training. That then led on to numerous sort of system developments in-house. And about 12, 13 years ago, our medical director at the time, who's now the chief executive of Oxley's, Dr. Rufia Kocher, came to me and said, there's this thing called medical revalidation coming along, coming down the road. He was chair of the mental health group for revalidation in London, and he wanted to get ahead of it. So he said, can we develop something? And that's where we started. So we developed a medical revalidation and appraisal system for Oxley's. It was never intended to be commercialised, but after showing it to a number of medical directors in London, it seemed to pique an interest, and people wanted to know more, to see more, and to see if it was viable for them to use it as a solution. That then led to 10 years ago us setting up a joint venture. So for those of you who don't know, SARD is a joint venture. We're part owned by the NHS, and our partner trust is Oxley's. So it's a mental health and community trust. Since the inception of the company, we started off, we had a couple of initial clients for about 400 or 500 users maximum, and 2 or 3 sort of rotating members of staff that came in, and we've grown since then. Actually, so much so that we've grown since this presentation was set up, and I forgot to change this bit because we now actually supply well over 50,000 users and over 50 trusts. So I'll show you a bit of the makeup of those trusts as we go through. But our promise to each of our clients is the same, regardless of size, whether you're an acute, mental health, community, it doesn't matter. It's very simple. We offer great technology and great customer service, and that cuts across the system that I'm going to show you today, as well as all of the systems that we offer. I will mention some of the other modules that we do. If you require any other information about those at a later date, or are interested in anything, then please just get in contact with us. We're very accessible. So our focus has always been on this idea of utilising innovative technology, providing simple and flexible solutions. And actually the flexibility is really key here, because the solution I'm going to say around Physician Associates is actually born out of 2 systems that we developed for other things. But because of the level of configurability and flexibility, it allows us to actually quickly and quite nimbly move those systems to reflect the requirements of Physician Associates. So that gives you a little bit of history. What we deliver, as I mentioned, we started off with medical revalidation. That then led to 360 because people wanted multi-source feedback as part of that. We were then asked to build a job planning system. That job planning system led to us building an e-leave system with Guy's and St Thomas's. We then built a nursery validation system, Appraisal for All. We've just built an e-rostering system. And there's a couple of other things that aren't on here, which are sort of open source projects around ESR, wrappers, and something called Murfin Plus, which is around capacity and demand and job planning. So if that piques any interest of anyone, please feel free to get in contact with us. The really important point about all of this is that we develop systems with organisations, with trusts. We don't go away and build something and think, oh, you know, the market's going to need this. We tend to be approached by a trust or a number of trusts to say, actually, we'd really like this and we'd like it to work in this way. And what we find is that other trusts feel exactly the same. Even after systems have been developed, there is no necessary endpoint. So all of the things that you see on screen in front of you have developed continuously and will continue to develop. So medical revalidation today does not look like it did when we started 10 years ago. And that is due to having constant flows of feedback from all of our end users, from all of our stakeholders, and trying our best to keep on top of that, to build new features, and to make sure that where a process changes, that we're at the forefront of that. And the best way to do that is to make sure that your systems are flexible and configurable, as I mentioned before. So they're the systems. In terms of who we work with, lots of trusts. This is just an example. All over the country, as I mentioned before, mental health, community, acute. Some of our clients have very small numbers, 30, 40 users. Some, like Manchester, for example, are 2,000, probably 2,000 plus now, because the numbers seem to go up every year. So we've got a very sort of diverse portfolio of clients, and that helps us because it allows us to get information from each about things that are upcoming, things that are important, and things that need to potentially change. And as we go through this, you'll see that flexibility is reflected in the systems that we have. I just wanted to mention this lovely diagram, which says mission control at the top. Purely because anything you do around workforce nowadays is being driven from the centre around interoperability, and I think it's just important to state where we're at in terms of that, because any potential system that you could use within a trust, there is going to be an emphasis now on how that information is utilised with other systems that you potentially need to use around a group of people or for reporting purposes around your governance areas. So where we stand and where we've always stood on this is that we are very open to talking to other systems. We've got some examples in here of where we talk to external systems. The diagram itself, although if it's the first time you've seen it, which it probably is, will be relatively confusing. Essentially what it says is all of our systems are designed to talk to each other, but equally where there is an accessible relationship with an external supplier to us, we are very happy to extend our hand and talk to that system and allow data to flow. We do have, for example, on here, StudyLine, that's now an established link. We're working with organisations like Rotamap, for example, to link to their sort of specialised rostering systems for anaesthetists. We've had conversations with organisations like Patchwork. So we're always looking to make sure that any system that we have, that the data is not held hostage in that system, that there's the ability for it to move around. So anything you do with us in terms of our own modules, you can rest assured that we're always making sure that there's the connections exist. But equally, if you think about anything in terms of our systems with the context of other providers, we're always very happy to sort of establish a relationship. It doesn't always happen because it takes two parties to do that, but rest assured, from our perspective, we are all about interoperability and all about making sure that your data is accessible to you as you require it to be. So that was a bit about us. In terms of the Physician Associate stuff, I don't want to labour on this point too much, but just really to sort of build a picture in terms of where we've come from. So it surprised me, and it surprised me when I did the first webinar around this, about how long Physician Associates have actually been a thing, been established, way back in 2003. In fact, it shocked me when we spoke to a Physician Associate from Epsom and St Helier, and they said, "Oh no, I qualified in 2012." Because for us it was relatively new, and that was because there was no onus on our systems to sort of deliver something for this. But things have obviously changed. So it's been around for a long time. Obviously, as you can see from here, I put some notes around the fact that healthcare professionals, they work as part of multidisciplinary teams. There's the Faculty of Physician Associates, which falls under the Royal College of Physicians, and that really looks after education and training and national certification and recertification examination. And then there's this thing, the PAMVR, Physician Associate Managed Voluntary Register. And I will go into, when we get to the system, how we deal with making sure that information around that is captured, if you like. So I'm just, excuse me for a second. I've got so many screens, it's a lot to deal with. So we need to make sure that whatever we provide to you is able to capture some of the key elements. So in terms of the requirements, now I think this is where the configurability and flexibility of our systems really starts to come to the fore, because a lot of the sort of chatter that I've been hearing is that things are going to change. In fact, Fran only this morning sent through something around how Physician Associates sort of regulation and so on will change, and when it may happen, and how the law will affect it, and the different dates that things are going to sort of surface. And this isn't new to us, because when we were developing medical revalidation and appraisal, things were changing every single day for 6 months up till sort of the 2012 date when it was meant to go live. So that allowed us to sort of have a working mentality that systems should not stand still because processes don't. So we need to make sure that we future-proof them. And the best way to do that is to make sure that your systems are flexible in the first place, and that changes can be made in a very agile way. So the requirements as they stand, as I say, there's now an online examination every 6 years. I should imagine there will be some sort of change when this comes under GMC purview in terms of what that looks like. There's a personal and professional development toolkit, and there is within that a portfolio of providing evidence, up-to-date evidence around the development of skills, knowledge, education, management, leadership, as well as other activities. And there is an FPA suggested profile structure, and that is important because what I'm about to show you will sort of go through how we've been able to replicate that. So the key thing here, and I'm labouring on it because I think it's really important whenever you look at any system for your sort of purposes of today, you need to ensure that you're not tying yourself into something that is overly structured and as such can't change when processes change. And the reason why I wanted to go through the sort of information about Physician Associates is because things are likely to change. And we've seen certainly a ramping up of people talking to us about how our systems can support what people are doing. But equally, in a few years' time, that may look very different. So you don't necessarily want to buy a system that can only do what the process requirements are for today, when they may very well change in the future. So configurability is key here. And the other aspect that's also key is the support that we provide. And I talked about great technology and great customer service. The technology is the configurability, but the customer service adds a couple of layers which I think are really important. The first layer is obviously anyone utilising a new system is supported in how to do it, and it makes life easier. It takes the onus off the trust having to support those things. But secondly, support means a lot more than just us helping people. It means we've got an open channel of dialogue to all of our users, and as such we get feedback. And we get feedback about our systems, we get feedback about how processes are changing, and it allows us to always either get ahead of what's coming or to make sure that we can be quick enough to change things so they reflect the requirements of that individual group or a trust going forward. So those two aspects for us have always been and will always be key. So what we'll do now is I will come out of this if I can, and then hopefully you should be able to see a portfolio that says Mrs. Helen Matthews. Jan, can you see that? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can? Lovely, perfect. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to take a step back from this first, because this is a representation of a portfolio for a physician associate. But what I'm going to show us is a representation of a portfolio for someone called John T. Smith. Oh, there you go, advertising what we're doing now. And this portfolio is for medical education, medical appraisal. And you can see here, there's 15 different sections and they cover different things: maintaining good practice, continuing professional development, teaching, lots of evidence requirements. The reason I'm showing you that is because our portfolio is set up in such a way, and for those of you who know SARD or use SARD, will know that it can be tailored very easily and it can be configured very easily. And it's important to note, because when I show you this, which is completely different to that, there's one section, it gives you the understanding that even as this stands today, following what we followed in terms of the personal and professional development toolkit, that we have the ability to quickly maneuver that if it's required, and it very well will be required, I would imagine, in the future. So before getting into the detail of the Physician Associate portfolio, just wanted to sort of cover off a couple of sort of system housekeeping things to understand. So as with all of our systems, it's modular based. It's also cloud based, so you can access it on any device that's got internet connection, whether that's mobile or tablet or desktop or laptop. So that's very straightforward. Every user of our system gets a dashboard, and depending on their roles within the process, that dashboard can be different. So talking about medical revalidation appraisal, if you're an appraiser, you get an appraiser dashboard as well. If you're a responsible officer, you get an RO dashboard. But within this, everyone will get a dashboard, and it will give them information that relates to the areas that they're currently covering within that system. So if they're not doing job planning and they're not doing multi-source feedback, then they won't see any of those things. But as this is a demo site, it tends to show everything. You can see here there's a number of sort of modules at the top, and again they appear and disappear based on the needs of the individuals, and they can be mixed and matched within trusts, so some people can see some things and others can not. So just a couple other bits on here. Support, as I said, is really important to us, so we have sort of video tutorials. We've got static help and feedback, so people can provide us with information about the system, what works, what improvements they would like to see. We've got information about key status icons, so people can understand what these mean. We tend to sort of lean towards the red, amber, green, but that's not so great if you've sort of got any colourblind issues. So we make sure that all this information accessible tells you exactly what each of these mean. And most importantly on here is this live support online. And I believe Megan is on the call. I won't ask her to say hello, but Megan is the Director of Customer Services within SARD, and looks after the customer support team. And those are the people that when you use this online chat that you speak to, they're not bots, they're real people. They've got extensive knowledge about our systems, and are always willing and able to help. But as I mentioned before, that online chat also serves as serves another purpose, which is to get that continuous feedback. And one of Megan's roles is to sort of directly liaise with each of our clients, but also to liaise with Charlotte and Babs, who work in the organisations. Charlotte is our technical project manager and Babs is our chief technical officer, to pass the information back about what needs to be developed and what we can do. So that gives you an idea of some of the housekeeping side of things. In terms of the system itself, when we were initially having conversations with one of our clients about this, who approached us and said, you know, we've got some physician associates, we're using your medical revalidation appraisal system, and there's some real synergy in there. We know that the portfolio can be configured. Could we use this system for the purposes of physician associates? To which we said, let's have a look, let's see. And when they originally came to us, they talked to us about what the structure of this should be. So when you look at this, and we subsequently spoken to other trusts, and I think there are some differences about how trusts go through the process and the requirements, but the one that you'll see today is actually based on this, which is the 2019 Personal Professional Development Toolkit for Physician Associates. And what you'll see as I move through here is that this is the suggested portfolio structure. Now, this isn't to say that it's the only portfolio structure that you can have. There are, as you've already seen, between the medical revalidation portfolio that I showed you and the physician associate one, even on the briefest of looks, you can see that they're different. For the purposes of this, though, we've stuck to this. So things around summary CVs, certifications of qualifications, CPD, work-based place assessments, which I will talk about in more detail as we go through. These are all reflected in the different sections that we have within the system. So that's the methodology behind that. That's why we've gone for this. But as I say, if there are particular areas, sort of local requirements that you wish to put into the system, then that's easy enough for us to do. And is not a problem and doesn't come at extra sort of development cost, as it were. So the system itself, as I say, here we've only got one section, and under each of these sections there is the ability to provide evidence against different requirements. So summary CV, for example, it gives you some guidance about what it is that is required for you to do. And then you can see here I've uploaded an example summary CV. But more importantly, what I want to get to first before going through those sections is the structure of this page. So you'll notice I've got a number of tabs open, but actually in terms of this is a one-page system. So everything you need to upload here or fill in here is on this page. There is the ability to actually use another of our systems, and I will get to that shortly, called Foundry, but for everything else I can start to get rid of them. So these are just copies of different things. So you'll be on one tab and you'll be on one page. Essentially, with each of these different requirement areas, evidential requirement areas, when I click on them, what you'll see is on the right hand side it just changes the title and the guidance. The structure of each of these sections is exactly the same, and this is really useful because it allows for familiarity of the system. It allows us for the system to be very intuitive, and for people to, once they've learned how to do it once, they know how to do it for each of these sections. So the structure itself, as I mentioned, you've got the title of the evidential area, the guidance that you can add information to. You can configure that as well if you wish to provide more guidance around what it is an individual needs to do. That will change on each section. We then have this little ribbon, and this is essentially, it's not a compliance checkbox. If I select complete, it doesn't mean it's all been signed off and completed. It just means that I believe I've got enough information in that evidence area. Then there's the uploading of evidence itself, and within this there's numerous ways in which you can do it to try and make it simple and straightforward. You obviously give a description of what the evidence requirement is. You then can define how long a piece of evidence stays in the portfolio for. So if it's an annual appraisal, but you've done something that actually, typically in medical revalidation, we talk about multi-source feedback. And when you do one of those, it generally lasts for 5 years. What you don't want to do is each of those 5 years have to go and re-upload it to your next appraisal. So you can actually set an expiry date to say how long a piece of evidence should stay for. Or if you just know it, you want to keep it for this one and the next one, you can do that. If you do nothing, it stays for a year. And once that appraisal is completed, it will then go into, it'll always be in, but it will then remain in the document section that you've got. So you can still access it at a later date, and you can still look at previous appraisals and see the evidence that was attached to those. But in terms of it showing for your next actual appraisal, if you don't select anything, then it won't show. But you do have the ability to do that. Attaching documents is very straightforward. It's almost exactly the same as if you were writing an Outlook email and click on the attached document. You'd then go and browse your folders and files for the information that you needed, give it a title and attach it. Alternatively, you can email things to the system, and once they're emailed to the system, you can then just attach existing documents. So I can just select one of these and attach it, and it will then appear on the screen. I'll show you how to do that in the work-based place assessment section. You can attach as many documents as you like. There's no limits on file sizes. There's no limits on file types. You can add anything you wish. That's absolutely fine. So you can have one piece of evidence or 20. It's entirely based on the requirements and the individual's ability to gather that information. The next section is around comments and reflection. Again, anything that you wish to put in here, you can. If you need to reflect on something, you can put your reflection in there. You can also reflect on in a Word document and add it as a piece of evidence and call it reflection. So there's flexibility in there. And then there's private notes. Now, the one important thing to note about this system is the evidence section and the comments and reflection at a certain point will be open to the person that's appraising and the physician associate. So they'll be able to see the information that exists and the evidence that exists and any comments and reflections that exist, but they will not be able to see any of the private notes. It's not an overly used function, but it's useful if you do want to make notes that isn't necessarily part of the appraisal conversation. But so once you've then learned how to do that, once you've learned how to put evidence in, how to put your comments and reflections in and any private notes, you now know how to use the entire portfolio section of the system. Now, what I won't do is I won't go through each of these because it will take too long, and I want to get the opportunity for questions. I'll just pick on one because I think this is a useful one to look at in terms of how our system operates and how the potential to use our Foundry system as well and what that will mean for the future. So when we first spoke to our client about the requirement for physician associates, there was a requirement for external forms to be filled in, and one of those is around this thing called mini KEX, the clinical evaluation exercise. There are others, but these I think is around 4 sort of external forms. Now our portfolio system works in a way that it captures evidence, so you're able to upload evidence into the system. It doesn't necessarily work in a way that allows you to capture the information within it, other than things like multi-source feedback. You can do that within the system. So this section here is around pulling in things like work-based place assessments into the system. So as I sort of demonstrated before, if I have a completed mini clinical evaluation exercise and I wanted to add another one, let's put in 2021, we've gone back here, and I wanted to attach a document, let's just attach any existing document. That's how straightforward it is for me to do it. This, however, was created outside of our system. It was in fact created within one of our other systems. So we have a form builder, and I will speak about that in a little bit more detail in a second. But I wanted everyone on the sort of call to understand that this section here is about sort of pulling information in. So it's about uploading evidence to the system matches these requirements. We have another solution which will morph into something even better as we develop it sort of going through. And that is our Foundry system. So just in terms of the flexibility of our system, as you can see, we can give you guidance to what you need within here. But we've also got this bit here, which says click here to log into Foundry, where you can create a mini KEX form and send it to your assessor. Once you've completed it, you can PDF it and you can upload it back into the system. So we'll flip over to that system in a second. As you can see on here, there's a number of sections that I've not started, there's some I've completed, there's some that are in progress, and it will give you a visual representation of where you're at. And at the right point in time, you're able to open this up. Now, the other area here that's worth noting is that currently with this system, it does take you through to the MAG form. Now, we've spoken to various trusts about this in terms of is the MAG form okay? Some trusts have said, you know, they're happy to, you know, quite like to use it, but make sure that individuals are informed of what sections they should and shouldn't complete. But we had a discussion yesterday, and we are looking at how we can utilize separate tenants. So your physician associates won't necessarily be on the same system as your medics. It will look exactly the same. It will just be a separated tenant, which allows us some flexibility to make sure and look at what the appraisal forms could be that are different to the MAG forms, to look at how notifications go out, because there's different requirements for different levels of physician associates in terms of notifications. There's also different requirements in terms of how many things individuals have to do, like work-based place assessments and so on, depending on whether they're year 1, year 2. So we are looking at that. And so there's 2 areas that are really important around that. One is around sign-in. So we've got this thing called SARD Auth, which is something that hopefully over the next sort of 6+ months will be in place, which is essentially, if you know single sign-on, it's a bit like that. It's signing on in one place and having access to the areas of the system that you require. And the second part is the integration of what's called our Foundry system. And this is the bit here where it says click here to log into Foundry. So if I am required to complete a mini KEX or a number of the work-based place assessments, you have a couple of options here. You can either utilize something completely external to us, whether there's any sort of accessible forms that already exist that you can fill out online, using things like Google Forms to create your own, or the alternative is that you can use our Foundry system. And I'll just switch over to this. So it is currently a separate system, but we are working at the moment and hopefully again over the next sort of 6+ months to integrate our Foundry system into our main SARD medical appraisal and revalidation system, as well as job planning and so on. And the reason for that is because it's a very powerful form building tool. We can essentially replicate any forms that exist external to our system. So when you go onto the Royal College of Physicians and you have a look at their mini clinical evaluation exercise, and it has all this information that you need to access and certain areas that you need to fill out. What we are able to do in here is, if I go to the mini clinical evaluation exercise, and I'll try and bring this up alongside, what you'll see is it will ask for various bits of information. So date of assessment, that's already up there, the name of the physician associate, you've got the PAMVR number, which you have here as well, date of the assessment, the assessor's name and email address. So that's all on there. But then equally, when it comes to the sections you need to fill out, if I click on assessment, you'll see here state the setting for the learning event. Sorry to keep clicking backwards and forwards, but I just wanted to show you that we've replicated this in its entirety. And this is actually quite straightforward for us to do on Foundry. So all of the things that you would be required to fill in as part of your work-based place assessment, we can replicate. Equally within this, there can be a sign-off process. So you can complete something on Foundry. There can be a sign-off process. It can be completely signed off. And as it stands at the moment, the way the system works, you would download this as a PDF. You would then go back to your SARD main system for physician associates and upload that evidence in the system. The purpose of the development work we're doing is to try and get to a point, hopefully relatively quickly, where you don't necessarily feel like you're leaving systems, you're not duplicating sign-in, and actually once you complete the form in Foundry, you can automatically pull it through to the SARD main physician associate system. So hopefully that sort of all makes sense. It's a little bit of an interim solution, utilising the configurability of the systems we've already got, with a plan to make sure that we integrate those things fully. And I see Kevin's back, and he's actually the one working on SARD Auth, which is how we're going to sort of eliminate the requirement to sign on to different systems.
We're halfway there already.
There you go, halfway there already. So that hopefully gives you an overview of the fact that we're a very flexible organisation. We work in partnership with people. Support is very important to us. We have systems in place already that can be utilised for the physician associate groups and any other groups. I mean, we have dentists on our system. Lots of different people are able to utilise it. We also have a system that allows us to build the forms that are required for physician associates. And then the plan to make sure we have a single sign-on integrated systems. And as of yesterday, looking at the idea of separating out tenants, which means that we may have the flexibility to put different appraisal forms into the system. So all of these things are sort of part of a bigger picture, but as it stands today, we can still do all this stuff. I just wanted to give you an indication of where it could go or where it is going to go. So yeah, I suppose now is the best time to open the floor to see if anyone has any particular questions. I'm hoping that made a reasonable amount of sense. But when you're talking to yourself, like I have over the last 45 minutes, you're never sure. So please, if anyone has any questions, anything at all about this that you wanted to ask, just shout at me or raise your hand, and we will get to you. And now I can have the awkward silence while we wait for anyone to ask a question. Oliver.
Hi, you all right?
Yes, good, thanks. How are you?
Good, yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that presentation. Very interesting. Just a quick query. I deal with the revalidation and appraisal stuff in Hull to do with our consultants and other doctors from GMC registration point of view. So the physicians associates at present, they're not part of the GMC regulatory body, are they? It's a separate thing at the moment, is it?
It's coming.
Is it? Is it? Yeah, because
yeah,
that was my sort of thing with it. Like I said, like I've heard it might be on the horizon, and I wasn't sure when or if it was definitely going to happen. But I presume it's going to sort of follow a similar thing to the medics in terms of they'll have to undergo the same type of stuff.
Yeah, I believe so. And this is the very useful document that Fran sent me this morning.
Ah, right, okay.
If you can see it on screen, this is the GMC site saying bring in physician associates and I can barely say physician associates. I'm not even going to bring it into regulation, and it talks about when. So it's actually still a sort of year and a bit away, maybe a year and a half away.
Right.
But I suppose my point around this is, yeah, we understand these things are going to change, so the system's going to have to change, because what are the current 6-year examinations may not look like that. They may pull them in line with sort of like a 5-yearly revalidation process or what have you. So yes, that's happening.
No, that's fine. Yeah, because that was my sort of, I don't know if I will be involved in that at this trust in Hull, but with me having strong links with the revalidation and stuff from the GMC related point of view, then if this is coming, it might be something we'll go down. But I just thought I'd raise the question because I was a little bit unsure, and I was thinking if it's going to happen next week, I'm going to have a bit of a problem because I'm not fair with it all. So it's good to know that it's on the horizon, but it's not immediately going to happen in the next few months. But is this link on the GMC website? I'm just trying to look on your screen.
It is gmc-uk.org. I'm quite happy to send this link out.
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you. And then it just I can liaise with my colleague about that, because like I said, we've got somebody who leads on the physicians associates stuff here in Hull, and I think she'd be very interested to see all of this and things. So yeah, that'd be great if you could circulate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So no need to immediately panic, but sort of thing will be upon us before we know it. I think everything is when you've been in this game for the last 10 years like we have, things just like it's like oh
yeah,
there it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks. Thank you.
No worries. And then Nana, is it Nana? Have I said that right? I've got a couple of hands up. I don't know. No. I said that. Is it Nana? Okay. Well, I'm not. If it is, then you're on mute. But feel free to shout if you have a question. Is there any other questions from anybody else that's on the call? Anything else that we didn't cover or you would like us to cover? Oh, silence is always horrible. Got got a thumbs up from Louise, I think. That's good. I don't know what that was for, but thumbs up back. Okay. All right. Well, if there are obviously any other questions, as I said, Chris and Jan will be in contact with those of you that kindly attended today. I hope it kind of made sense in terms of what we do now, what we're going to do in the future, and how that will work for any trusts to sort of engage with us moving forward. We will have another. When's the next webinar, Fran? Just for information purposes, do you know? You're on mute.
It's the next one's the beginning of March.
Beginning of March.
Beginning of March, the first Thursday in March, and that will be for job planning for all.
Okay.
And we'll get invitations out to those that it's relevant to. Yeah,
no worries. Well, if you know any colleagues that are interested in job planning for all, so that's not that sort of AHPs and CNSs and various groups, then let us know. We're quite happy to send out information to everyone and to be passed on to colleagues. But yeah, so generally that's largely about it. Please, as I say, if you have any questions, just feel free to contact us. We're all very nice and accessible people. We're very happy to help, even if it's not about this, if it's about something else that you've seen from today's presentation that is of interest, please feel free to contact us. But otherwise, thank you very much everyone for your time. I hope you found that useful, and we look forward to engaging with you all in the future. So thank you very much everybody, and I will say goodbye.